sense that your theology has somehow shaped your music, even the non-sacred music?
There's a part of me that understands that the simple fact that I create it all is, like Tolkien described in On Fairy Stories, a subcreation. I create because God created before me. And that's not something I chose to do to follow him. It's something that I just do inherently.
Mhm.
But I acknowledge that. And, that's something that, um, I think I would do if it was, me writing poetry, me cooking, me painting,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah.
I get to do it most often with music, which I very much
Mhm.
love.
I'd like to flip that question around and then ask, do you feel there's something about the arts or music in particular that has enriched your faith?
Yes. I grew up in a fundamentalist church, and so an awful lot of how um, evangelicals of that particular branch approach the Bible is quite literal.
Mhm.
And one of the things that the arts taught me very quickly is God as a poet deals in figurative language quite a bit. And so, um, music as a figurative language, or poetry, or painting, or film, or anything like that, really makes me able to understand God on a more intimate level, simply because I'm not trying to just look at the Bible in a literal sense, but it makes me think of how the essential paradox of God as man and God as spirit together is now not incomprehensible, because I see it in art all the time, all of the time. Or there is this particular kind of thing that can't be described directly via math, but can be described via poetry. And I think a lot of what makes God God, for instance, a very simplistic sort of thing of God is love. Well, love is this pretty amazing, big, huge concept that the notion of synecdoche, part for the whole and whole for the part, can be easily represented in a particular kind of melodic sort of way, but that particular kind of thing also reflects the divine, right? And it's something where I understand God a lot better because it's personal, but it's also global or universal. And I hear that in so much music. I read it in poetry. I read it in, good storytelling. And that's not something that I think I would have just gotten from seminary.
That's great. Are there any movies that capture this dynamic as well or communicate that?
Oh yes, this particular movie is about one of my favorite subjects, which is food. The movie is called Babette's Feast. Came
Mhm.
out late '80s, if I remember correctly. It's about a pair of sisters who live in a very strict Christian community in Denmark, and their little community is very insular and it's very rigid and legalistic. Um, and they end up taking in this refugee who comes to their village out of the goodness of their hearts, and they don't quite know what to make of her. But it turns out that they bring her in to come and be their cook and clean and whatnot. And over the course of the film, they're kind of perplexed by her because she's obviously gone through some sort of tragedy and we don't know what it is. And she's so appreciative that what she wants to do is she wants to cook this meal for them. Well, actually, she finds out a bit of news and then she wants to give back and cook this meal for them. And it turns out that this meal that she makes, she orders all the materials in from Paris. And over the course of the film, you find out that she won this big lottery with tons and tons of money.
Mm.
And instead of leaving the community and going back into the world of, she was a restaurant owner of what is now be a 3-star Michelin place. but it was Paris during the communes, and so kind of a revolutionary sort of thing happening at that point. So instead of going back and resuming her life, she was transformed by this community, and she chose to give back to them. And so they invited the entire community in. She spent the entire winnings on bringing all this stuff in, and she cooked this meal that was just stunning. And all of these people who are very, we don't do frippery in our life. Everything is
Mhm.
this, and we walk by the book, are growing in their appreciation of the fact that this food is so stunningly good. And at the end of the night, that's just kind of
Mhm.
ecstasy of pleasure and
Mhm.
glory to God. Just, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. Glory
Mhm.
to God just happens, and it's almost like Pentecost, where the tongues of fire come down and the
Mhm.
people go out into the streets and are just glorying on this. And it turns out that this kind of transformation of both Babette and the two sisters was immense and complete. And yeah, it's just a film that I think of now, and I just can't help but feel, my spirit get larger because I've had that experience of watching it.